Today on the Hobby Grotto, we're looking at Kyric Acolytes with a twist. Laying down the base coats here, starting with Ahriman Blue. And the reason I'm starting with the skin colour is because it's always good to try and paint inside out. That way you can fix any messiness with the subsequent colours. It's also really important to have these paints nice and thin for the base coats because there's a lot more layers coming, and I always do 2 coats with the bases, so don't worry too much about coverage on your first pass over. It's more important to keep the paint thin. The thin paint is going to run into the recesses a bit more, and it's going to kind of look like there's less coverage on the highlighted points, and that's natural and that's fine. Because we're going to be adding some more colours with the subsequent layers to the raised areas anyway, so you don't actually need to have as much coverage on those parts. I'm painting the shield with Screamer Pink, love this colour, and I've been trying to find an opportunity to use it on a model in conjunction with Ahriman Blue because I think these 2 colours just work so well together. And I did kind of have a few different ideas for colours, but I was like, I'm going to go with the pink on this one. Because I've got lots of vibrant colours on the rest of the model, I'm going for a nice neutral bone white colour for the clothing, and this should also create some nice contrast with the other parts of the mini. Xandria Dust is a nice base for anything in this colour range, but you can also just mix a little bit of brown with bone for a similar effect. It's really just a base because light colours like bone really need something underneath, or you'll just be kind of wasting too much time with lots of coats. And for those wondering, this model is actually a Kyric Acolyte from Warhammer Underworlds, from the Eyes of the Nine warband, so it's going to look a little bit different to the standard kind of Acolyte you'd get in a box. But paint-wise, there's no difference, it's just a little bit more of a unique model we've got here. The final thing to sort out are all the metallic parts on the mini, and I'm giving them a base of Gehenna's Gold. You've got a lot of options for gold paints when it comes to Citadel, and I've tried my fair share. I just particularly like Gehenna's Gold because it's got a nice reddish tone to it without going overboard. I've also got a tutorial looking specifically at painting true metallic metal, so if you'd like to know a bit more about that stuff, you can check out the link above or in the video description. My Dawnstone's gone a bit funny, so I'm using it really watered down here just so I don't get any bumpy bits. And I'm covering the whole base with 2 coats of this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is an Underworlds model, so your base is most probably going to be a little bit different, but I'm just keeping it in a nice simple scheme so it doesn't draw the eye away from the mini. Now that everything's base coated, I always like to give the whole model a coat with a wash like Nuln Oil, just to speed up the shading process. That way when we come back with the layers, we can just work up from what's already happening on the model. Before I start putting any more layers on the model, I'm going to dry brush the base grey to get out of the way because it can be a messy process dry brushing. That way any areas of the feet I hit can be tidied up later, and this is just a good philosophy to have generally when you're doing bases because you're often going to be dry brushing on bases, so I like to just get it out of the way before I start painting those highlights on. I'm going to be working up each of the individual colours to completion now, starting with the base layers again, and in this case Xandria Dust on the cloth. The next layer up after this is Ushabti Bone, nice and thin so you can build the highlight layers up, just continuing the blending here. And after that, I've mixed some white with the Ushabti Bone, about 50-50, and these are the final highlights on the cloth, so you can go quite stark here. Whenever you're going for something white, it's always good to build up from an off-white base, and then just reserve the white for the final highlights. You could even go through and add a final pure white highlight here, but I think the 50-50 mix is probably enough as the clothing isn't really a focal point of the model. Now onto the skin, and as with all the colours, I'm just starting with the base layer of Ahriman Blue to bring back some of the colour that was lost with the Nuln Oil. To keep with the idea that this is blue skin, I'm going to be mixing up the highlights with some skin tone, in this case Kislev Flesh. And I'm just starting with a little bit of flesh mixed in with the Ahriman Blue so it's not too overpowering. But just overall the Kislev Flesh gives it a really nice tone. You can do a couple of blends here with the skin layers depending on the detail level you want to go to, but I'm just going with the final skin highlight now, which is a 50-50 sort of mix of the Kislev Flesh and Ahriman Blue. Essentially at this stage you're just playing with the skin tone, and if you want to have even more of a skin feel to it, you can go further with these highlights and just kind of keep blending up so that the blue is more of an underlying tone. But I just kind of prefer to stay with a more vibrant color like this. For the shield, I'm going to do a more volumetric style highlight, and this is a little different to the way I normally paint, so it's a bit of an experiment here. But I'm kind of hoping it will make the shield a bit more interesting, so yeah, we'll see. It's always good to try new things with models. I've grabbed the Kislev Flesh again for these highlights. As with the blue, I'm starting Screamer Pink heavy here. You don't want too much of a jump in colour on something like a shield because it's going to be more apparent on the large flat surfaces. And then moving into a more 50-50 blend of the two colours for the final highlight. I'm just concentrating this on the top part of the shield. The beauty of true metallic paints like this gold is that you don't have to do too much work after the initial base coat and wash. The paint's gonna, give you that shine anyway, but I'm coming along here with a Gehenna's Gold Ironbreaker mix because I always like to give a bit of color depth to my golds. The little bit of silver mixed in is gonna create that faded and worn look at the extremities. I also like to do a final highlight with pure silver to help the definition of the sculpt. Sometimes if I'm putting a matte varnish on my miniature, I'll do this final highlight after, just to kind of bring back some of that metallic shine that gets lost with matte varnishes. Now before I paint the base rim, I'm going to add a bit of Nihilakh Oxide to these little runes on the base, just to make them a bit more interesting. The general Kyric Acolyte models won't have these bases, so this is just an optional bit, but you might be painting the Eyes of the Nine. And then I just have to neaten up that messy rim with the traditional Abaddon Black. And that's my blue-skinned follower of Tzeentch complete. I found this colour scheme really interesting to paint because I've never really done skin in that tone before, and now, I don't know, I just want to do more. Thanks for tuning in to another video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you saw, and we'll see you next time on the Hobby Grotto.